Hi, welcome. First thing I'm going to do is for a little bit of warm up is to put you into two breakout rooms. I'm going to ask you to just do brief introductions with the people in the breakout rooms. We're going to do some work in breakout rooms. Um, all right. So everybody's back from the breakout rooms. I'm hoping you had some good, maybe a few people to chat with. And I see some contributions here. I see some orientation for group work, beginning of the year activities, icebreakers, team building, some scientific methods, kind of fun stuff. Um, Name tents, icebreakers, getting to know each other, Jenga. That sounds interesting. Um, so lots of kind of, ease into it, build some community, um, meet some people, all that kind of stuff. Um, One of the things that I realized after a while was that, at least at my school, that first 3 or 4 days, there were a ton of schedule changes. And so I would make a seating chart and have people start to get to know each other. And then 5 kids would leave and 4 new kids would come in. And then 3 new kids would register late. And so I kind of learned so that I didn't lose my mind. To do some things in the beginning of the year that were kind of low stakes and not super permanent, because you just have to know that it's outside your circle of influence, but there's some crazy schedule stuff that's probably going to happen. So glass bug mud, that sounds interesting. um, and get to know you activities. All right, so I wanted you to just think about that because I'm going to share with you some resources that will help you. Some will help you just get started in terms of organization and planning. Some are just some teacher tips and tricks and hacks, but also some ideas for how to get your year started, both for your kids and for parents and parent communication. So our session outline on slide 6. I'm going to first give you some hacks, some help, and a couple of announcements of some things that have maybe changed a little bit, and they'll make your life easier to know what's going on there. Some ideas for the first day and first week. And each time we do this, we'll give you some time to chat with others also, because I certainly don't have all the answers. Some parent communication ideas and some resources for that. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that you'll see that are available this year in the MyStar units some of the units had them last year, but not all of them. And they're going to hopefully make your life a little easier. So we'll talk about that too. So moving on, hacks, help, and announcements. So this is just kind of a grab bag of stuff. I wanted to share with you because I'm super happy to report that it seems that there are a number of districts that are actually giving their teachers some kind of credit or compensation for attending PL. So I've had a number of people say, I need to show my administrator, a list of things that I've done. So we do have a way that you can get that for yourself. So when you look on your teacher dashboard and you look where the circles are that are showing what phases you've completed and things like that, it's kind of small, but it says your PL summary. And if you click on that, you can download a printout of all the things that you've done with MyStar, if you signed in. We have that attendance list. And so that may be helpful to you. If you still need some kind of confirmation, I'm happy to send an email or whatever, here's the official confirmation that so-and-so was here. But you can do that yourself. And I think that's probably good to know. So that's a little teacher hack. Workbooks and kits, just an update. We do have a couple more workbooks coming online. Unit 6.3 is available in workbooks now. And Kendall Hunt is pretty close to being done with unit 6.7 and 7.4. And they're promising us to have the rest of them done sometime during the school year. So there's that information, if that is helpful to you. And then the last 3 years, this was Barb McIntyre's idea. She's also a retired teacher, and she is one of our assessment experts. But, at least in my life and apparently in Barb's life, you come in the first week of school and the school secretary is like, fill out your subfolder. And I'm like, I just got here. I don't know what's going on. And they always want to know what kids are reliable. I'm like, I haven't even met them yet. I don't know. But they always wanted a generic like emergency sub plan, or maybe you're the department chair and you need something in your back pocket for somebody who gets, sick in the middle of the night and can't make it in and there's a sub. So we've been using this one pager format. A one pager is where kids summarize an article and they do it, with some artwork and drawing and words and kind of connect it all. So it's very kind of open-ended and it requires some creativity, and it'll take them about the whole class period to do it if they do it with, with any sort of effort. So in 23-24, we had an article about bees. In 24-25, there was an article about dogs. And then Barb found this one this year about zombie caterpillars. And they're all articles from Science News Explorers, which is written at a middle school level. And it's, a reliable, authentic website. So just so you know, all three of those are available. The zombie caterpillar ones is brand new. So, go ahead and get a copy of that and print it out, and you can have your subfolder all ready to go. And then we wanted to let you know about a new process if you're requesting a new unit. So if you've already requested units in the past and they're on your dashboard, you don't have to do anything differently. But this year, if you're requesting a new unit that you haven't taught before, we are going to ask you to open up the unit prep course before we give you access to all the lessons. And that's coming from some of the PLFs around the state said, we think teachers aren't using the unit prep courses and we think they'd be useful to them. And probably you're not using it, or maybe other teachers aren't using it because it's in Canvas, which is a different platform than the teacher dashboard. And the only way you can get into that course is you have to respond to the email that comes right when you request the course. And if you miss that email, or you say, I'm going to do it later, and it gets lost, then you never have access to that course because you didn't click on the link when the email came right away. So we're going to ask you to click on the email link to the Canvas course right away. Module 1 should take you 5 minutes or less to just read through. And when you finish module 1, when you've clicked on all those pages, our database then will open up the unit for you on the dashboard. It does, sometimes our database talks to Canvas every 15-20 minutes ish. So if you go back to after you've gone through module 1 in Canvas, if you go back to your dashboard and you click on this button that says refresh completion progress, it'll do it immediately. So, or if you can wait until tomorrow to look at the unit, you don't have to worry about it. But if you want it right away, you can press that button. So that's just if you're doing a new unit. And so I kind of recapped it here. And then why should you care about unit prep courses? You may or may not have looked at one. Hopefully you have, but we rewrote them all over the past 3 to 4 years to try to make them more useful, to really actually save you time. So I kind of went about it with, when I was prepping for a MyStar unit, what did I need to know before I started, or what would have been really good for me to know before I started, because I didn't always know everything. And I launched the unit because I was living day to day, by the skin of my teeth. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, kind of a thing. And sometimes I would get in the middle of it and I'd be like, oh, I wish I knew that at the beginning. So I would have had everybody just take a look at one, except I can't give you access unless you have the invitation to the course. So it starts out with just an overview of the NGSS connections, and it's super short and quick. Here are the NGSS PEs and the engineering and science practices and the CCCs. And then it introduces the unit challenge, and it helps you, gives you ideas for what your bubble map might look like. And then it reviews the unit closer. So what's the final product that kids are going to do? Because I found myself sometimes in the middle of the unit and I was like, I don't really know what they're going to do at the end. I haven't gotten that far. So it just gives you a review of what the final unit challenge product's going to look like. There's a short module that has a whole list of things that you might want to think about printing, like a unit challenge organizer and unit summary table and things like that. And lesson slides, which you don't need to worry about creating them from scratch anymore because we have them now in all of our units. And then it goes into pretty decent detail for the first middle lesson, lesson 2, because I always felt like if I knew what lesson 1 was going to be, the unit challenge and the bubble map, and then I kind of had an idea where I was going with lesson 2 in terms of what materials am I going to need, what labs are we going to do, then the rest of it, you know, you can kind of get through as you go. But so it just kind of lays out lesson 2 for you. And then there's a brief kind of look at lesson 3, lesson 4, lesson 5, just what's the Uncover Share Lab, what's the Connect activity, so you can start thinking about, you know, if you do I need to collect 2-liter bottles or that kind of thing. Some student misconceptions, go over some of the big concepts that kids might get messed up on. And then we just take a peek at one of the scenarios from the assessment. So there's usually 3 or 4. We just take a look at one. And so you can kind of get an idea of here's what kids are going to be asked to do at the end. And there's a whole list of resources, everything you might want to print listed there, and some suggestions. And then that's it. So when you use these, you do not have to do the whole thing. You do not have to do it in order. So maybe you just want to skip down and look at, you know, this resource list at the end. Maybe you want to just look at potential student misconceptions, or maybe you just want to look at what do I need to do for lesson 1. So you can kind of click around and you can use it or not use it, but we're going to help everybody at least have access to it by asking you to click on that email right when you request the unit, so you don't get lost and never see it again. Okay, so I did have a question in the chat about the subfolder. So when I say for the subfolder, I really probably should say for your subfolder. And I'm assuming that everybody has that requirement in their building, that there's a folder kept in the office in case you have a sub. So this is, and one of the requirements that we always had was to have some kind of generic emergency sub plan. So this is actually just for your subfolder that the office asked you to fill out. And if they don't ask you to fill it out, you may provide stuff for a sub, or you may have something on your desk for an emergency sub plan. Anyway, that's what I meant by that. All right. Questions about what I talked about so far? Okay. If you think of something later, feel free to ask or hang out. You know, you can always hang out at the end and ask me then. I'm happy to help you out with any of those things. All right. So let's talk about those first day, first week things. And I'm going to ask you to be a little interactive now. So think about what are some of your goals for that first few days or first week. And I have some things that might be goals for you, and I have some lightning bolt little shapes. And what I'm going to ask you to do is think about, these might all be goals. What's maybe your primary goal, your number one goal? And grab one of the lightning bolts and just drag it over by which thing are you looking to do primarily in the first few days. All right, so I see a lot of establishing classroom culture, respect, caring, procedures, and rules kinds of things. Tread water while the scheduling snafus get worked out. That was always, that morphed into one of my goals because I got burned a few times, and then I'd start all the establishing the classroom culture after a couple of days. But teaching science skills for a lot of people, I agree that's going to be, maybe later in that first week or the second week. All right, so let's see what we have that might help you meet some of those goals. And, you may have more than one goal that, you maybe picked your first choice, but some of those other things are important too. So we do have a bunch of off-the-shelf lessons, and I linked on slide 10 the link so you can go right to the page that has them all listed. And we are thinking about maybe organizing them a little bit better because we keep adding and the list is getting kind of long. And so we're going to set them up in some categories. But some of the things that we have that might be useful in terms of procedures and rules would be like lab safety. So we have an off-the-shelf lesson on lab safety. We do have a lab session on, or a lab, an off-the-shelf lesson on Draw a Scientist, and that might that might connect with that, caring community kind of a thing, because we want to see, can kids see themselves as scientists, and what do they think a scientist looks like? Measuring length and interpreting graphs would be good ones if you were thinking about working on science skills, maybe not the first day or first couple days, but maybe later that first week or the second week. And the other two that we have that I highly recommend, especially if you're teaching sixth grade or you're teaching MyStar and your kids haven't really had much MyStar or NGSS instruction in the past, we have 2 off-the-shelf lessons on modeling. And the lesson A modeling is really based on 5th grade performance expectations. And the goal is to help kids focus on just putting the important things in the model and ignoring other stuff, and working towards using some symbols or some simple pictures versus drawing a still life of every single thing they can see. And that kind of skill of picking out, when you're looking at something and you want to draw a model of it, picking out what's important and thinking about how to symbolize it in a quick, simple way is not something kids do automatically necessarily. So that's lesson A. And then lesson B is a kind of a deeper dive into modeling, and it really talks about thinking of systems. So not all models are system models. A lot of models are just kind of, mental, describe your mental model. What do you think is going on here? A system model is much more kind of purposeful, and it's actually an engineering tool where you think about the boundaries of, what do you want to consider and what do you not want to consider outside of the boundaries. You think about inputs and outputs. You think about not just the parts that are in the model, but how those parts are interacting together. Is there energy or matter flowing through them? That kind of thing. So lesson B kind of beefs up that modeling, those modeling skills. So keep those in your back pocket, maybe not for the first day, but maybe the second week or something like that before you launch your first unit, especially if your kids are not super familiar with NGSS skills like that. And then the last thing in this section, before I ask you to I'm going to put you in your groups and let you kind of chat about what looks good here. The last thing that I wanted to mention, because we've started to include some differentiated materials, especially like the differentiated reading guides, and we're working on providing some more things where you would have choices of levels of support and levels of scaffolding. Before I taught MyStar, I had quite a bit of good differentiation training, and one of the best tips that I got was from another teacher. I was at University of Virginia at a differentiation workshop for a week. And I was like, this all sounds great, but I'm a science teacher. I don't want to put kids in groups at different levels. What if I'm wrong? What if I put kids in a lower level than they should be? Or what if I hurt their feelings or change the way that they see themselves, because I chose a group for them. And so I had a couple of teachers say, here's what we do. And so they started the school year, the first couple of days, with talking about people have different strengths and weaknesses, and everybody's good at something, and not everybody's, almost nobody's good at everything. And so there will be times that, you know, I'm going to give you the option of doing something that's a little bit more complex than what everybody else is doing, or maybe it's going to be a little bit more supported than what everybody else is doing. And I'm going to let you choose what you need on that day. So, you know, if you're having a rough week and there's a lot going on and you feel like you need to do the project that has a little more support, you can choose that. You know, the following week, if you're like, hey, that was too easy, or I'm feeling better this week, I want to try something harder, you can choose that. And so the way I worked to build that culture was, one of the ways it was to start out with these two activities. And so the first day we would do a bar graph. Everybody can do a bar graph. I taught sixth grade, and the kids are really good at bar graphs in elementary. They're not very good at line graphs, but they can do bar graphs. So I gave them some graph paper and almost no instructions other than we would go through and list, you know, what are some of the subjects, some of the things that you do in school. And we would just kind of list them as a class. And then I'd say, all right, take these things and I want you to rate yourself. And on the strength level, you can do 1 through 10. I used to just do a kind of a sad face, like I'm not great, and then kind of a, you know, straight line face, like I'm okay, or a happy face, you know. And so have kids create their school strengths graphs, and they don't have to put their names on them. I didn't even give kids instructions on colors or anything else, and they will all look very different. And so we would post them up on the room and I'd have every class do it. So the next day they'd walk in and there would be 100 different school strength graphs and no two are the same. And then we would have a conversation about, you know, do a gallery walk and what do you notice? And so that was a great way to kind of introduce this idea of everybody has strengths and things that they aren't so strong about, and that's okay. But I want you to learn science in a way that works best for you, and I'm going to support you in that. And then the day after that, the second day, we would do learning style inventories. And I know that learning styles have had some pushback recently that they're not really research based and blah, blah, blah. But this is the beginning of school and it's kind of fun. And it reinforces that idea that people learn in different ways at different paces at different times in their life. And so I gave you 4 different learning inventories that you can choose from. Some of them are, you know, may need to be adapted just a little bit to middle school. There is one for elementary kids. And so, and we just continue to have that conversation about, you know, everybody has different strengths and things that they struggle with, and that's okay. And I'm going to support you. So, I'm just throwing that out there because the beginning of the school year is, you know, the best time to do that. And if you're going to use the differentiated reading guides, this sets that up really nicely to let kids choose which level they want to do from week to week, and not lock them in, and help them just, you know, whatever level they choose, they can feel good about. All right. I am going to open up the breakout rooms and let you chat. Okay, thank you. Awesome. So I see a lot of interest in Draw a Scientist, which is a great, you know, beginning of the year activity. In fact, that came from another one of our Maya Star teachers who she just retired, but she helped us write that a couple years ago before she retired, because it's something she had done in her classroom and it worked really well. And it's a really good intro. And you can always do it again at the end of the year and see if there's, you know, been any change in perceptions. And then I saw a fair amount of interest in the bar graphs and the learning style inventories, which is great. And I shared that with you because that was a tip that I, you know, took and stole from somebody else, and it worked really well. And then just, you know, I know you're in there talking with your colleagues, and there's probably stuff that's coming up, you know, that maybe, you know, you didn't get written down here, or, you know, something that I didn't think of or bring up. Is there anything that you heard somebody else say that you thought was really great that the rest of the group should hear? Okay. No worries. Let's talk about our next section here on parent communication. So, um, what goals on slide 22? We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to ask you to grab a lightning bolt. What would be your primary goal? And these might all be goals, but which one maybe is the most important to you to set up with your parents starting out? I know a lot of people have a back to school night or a parent night or an open house or that kind of thing coming up. Or maybe you're just sending out an introductory email or something like that. So, what are some goals that you have for that? All right. So these are a little more kind of all over the place. We've got established caring and respectful relationships, which is, certainly going to make your life easier and reduce those requests and complaints as much as possible. You want to introduce the NGSS philosophies and practices, and that can also help you establish that caring, respectful relationship when people understand why you're doing what you're doing and how it's going to help their kids. And classroom rules and procedures so that parents can help their kids be successful. So those are all important. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for thinking about how to hit all four of those, or at least two or three of the four. And you may do this at back to school, like I said, or in your opening communication email on your Google Classroom or wherever you post things for parents, or back to school night or an open house. What I learned kind of the hard way was that it was really to my benefit to be proactive with parents in kind of doing a marketing job with them. Rather than emphasizing, your kid's going to need 3 red pens and 2 notebooks kinds of things. Those are important, but I only had 10 minutes with parents at back to school night, and I found that I was better off to really sell them on how much I was going to care about their kids and support their kids and what their kids were going to get out of my classroom. And so, I tried to build a little excitement about, your kids are going to have this great science experience, and people want their kids to have a great science experience because they want them to like science. There's a lot of well-paying jobs in science, right? Careers, and people are like, oh yeah, I want my kid to like science. So these are some resources that are from NGSS directly. And so there's this short video about why NGSS was written and, how the world is changing and we needed different science standards. So people kind of can think about, here's what it was like when I was in school, but here's how we can make it better. This second one is a PDF, so you can print it out. I used to use it as a handout along with, I'd show the video, give my speech, but then I would also hand out this used to look like, now it looks like kind of a thing. And when parents are reading this, they're like, hey, this is what I want my kids to do. This sounds good. I wish science was like this when I was younger. And so you're kind of selling them on this, idea that you're going to give their kids this really high quality experience. And then this last one is a little longer and a little more detailed, but it's more specific to middle school. And so again, looks less like, looks more like, and then there's some other deeper information. So depending on your audience and how much time and how much paper you have, those are some good resources from NGSS to start that whole building that whole idea that your kids are getting this amazing experience. And then I would introduce them a little bit to MyStar and talk about, we're going to have these unit challenges and give them some examples. And, we're going to want your kids to be engaged and be thinking about real life scenarios. And that the content in these units were designed by engineers and professors at Michigan Tech, along with middle school teachers. And so we can really trust that the science and engineering practices that are in them, are real life and accurate. And then, we want your kids to be problem solvers, and that's what we're going to help them do. And parents are like, yeah, I want that for my kid, right? So you're reducing those questions and complaints down the road. And then I would give concrete examples. Here are the, here's the unit we're going to start with, and then we're going to also do a couple other units. And these links are on the MyStar public page, and so you can always direct them there as well. If you're doing something that you're providing for them digitally. And then assessments. I learned this the hard way too. I spent my first November conference re-explaining about 35 times why kids were struggling with the Check Your Progress or with the embedded assessments. And I finally went back to my room and got a copy of a scenario with the questions. And like, this is what we're doing. It's different. It doesn't look like any other test your kids have taken, but we're asking them to use the science and engineering process practices to solve a problem. And here's why it's good, and your child will get better. So if you have time, or maybe, next communication opportunity, think about presenting them some information about 3D assessments, that it is going to be a transfer distance. So your kids can't memorize everything they know about bed bugs for the test in 8-1, because the test isn't going to ask them about bed bugs. It's going to ask them about mutations, and but they're going to use a different scenario. Remind them that it's similar to state and national tests like MSTEP. It requires the applications of the the SEP and the CCC, and we're helping them to have transferable skills that they can use in science class, but also, in real life. So I'm going to put you back in your rooms and let you chat a little bit. And these are a few of the things that are different about an NGSS curriculum. There is generally less homework. There's, no textbook. That's what I wanted there. Did I say no homework? There's no textbook, and that will really throw parents, because, some of the parents are really used to helping their kids study for tests and stuff. And they're like, well, if I don't have the book, how can I help them? So I'm going to just change that on those slides. So there's less homework, there's no textbook, and the tests are 3-dimensional. Those are some of the things that are different about NGSS. But if you were having a conversation with parents, what could you tell them about why this is a good thing? So, all right, thank you for that. Looks like you had some good conversations, and I know that's probably not enough time, but I don't want to keep you here all night. So I just kind of wanted you to be thinking about, how can you argue from evidence that this is a good thing, and kind of make some of these points to parents. These are often their concerns. So less homework is equitable. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Not everybody goes home to, someone who cleans out their backpack and makes them sit down and do their homework. The textbook allows for differentiation. You can make things place-based. There's lots of sense making and hands-on activities that doesn't happen in a textbook guided curriculum. And the 3D tests are application rather than just memorizing, and they're place-based and relevant to life. Less homework levels that playing field. Absolutely. No textbook provides a variety. Yeah, your kids are going to learn in ways that are really good for kids to learn. Reading is one of the least effective ways for people, adults, to learn and retain information. So, and the 3D tests are better representation, less paper waste. Absolutely. And one less thing at night. Yeah, embrace that, parents. This is going to make your life a little easier. I used to tell parents, I joke, I'm like, nobody's ever going to ask you to do a project in your basement, for 3 months. Like, I'm never going to ask you to do that. So, and they'd all go, thank you. So, Google Classroom, multiple real life media sources, and application based. All right, great. So these are some things that are in our the MyStar organizational resources that you can find on the dashboard. There's a document that has a bunch of organizational resources. This section I just copied and pasted it. But we also have a parent letter, a brochure. They're a little bit old and they could probably use an update, but they can get you started. There's some slides to help you introduce MyStar. Again, don't use it just as it is, but use those as a basis to create your own presentation. There's some of those NGSS videos and PDFs that I showed you. We do have we did a My Star Learning series a couple of years ago in August about being proactive, help your stakeholders get on board. So the video and resources for that are there. We did a whole set of slides for just assessments and how to be proactive and teach parents about the 3D assessments. So pull from that. And then we had a sample My Star parent handout from one of our districts. So those are all things to help you get started to plan that. And some resources that you can, pick and choose and put together your own presentation. And then I did want to tell you that this is on deck. We are just about done. We basically have them done, and we're going through the Spanish translation, and then we're going to publish a parent letter for each unit, so specific to the unit. And 6-1 is done. Steph, who many of you know, and her husband, who is a native Spanish speaker, and Steph is fluent, they've been doing the translation. Apparently, Google Translates is not quite how real Spanish speakers speak. So you can feel fairly confident the Spanish translation, you can feel quite confident is good. But we give in each one of these, we're going to give a brief, here's what the unit is about, how can you make connections at home, and some other ways that you can support your students. So these can be, you can print them and hand them out. They'll never make it home probably. But I would certainly consider posting them on your, Google Classroom, or copy some of the text and put it, in an email, or do whatever you want with them. But the text is there for you to use to talk about the parents, or talk to parents about the units. And so our goal is to have 6-1, 7-1, and 8-1 done by probably about the second week in September, and then the rest of them will follow shortly after. Okay, so some new resources that you'll find besides the parent letters. So let's talk about some of your teacher goals and why having some new resources would be good. What kind of resources would you like? Stuff that helps you reclaim personal time, stuff that helps you to be prepared, stuff that helps all students to be successful, stuff to polish up your pedagogical skills, so just pick one of those, or a couple of them if there's some extra lightning bolts. And then I'll show you some stuff that hopefully is going to do some of this for you. All right, so I see some interest in being prepared and reclaiming personal time, which certainly are worthy goals, and then wanting your students to be successful also is a great goal. And we'll talk about the opportunity to some of the pedagogical skills may help you get there too. But those are great goals. So let's talk about some of the things that we have, some new resources. So you may have taught a unit last year that had revised unit summary tables available, but they were not finished for every single unit until just this summer. And Lindsay has been busy publishing them. So when you open up your My Star dashboard with your new subscription for this year, you will see that every single unit has a revised set of unit summary tables, and they're embedded right in the lessons. So you shouldn't have to, it's not like you're going to look at the old ones and then have to go look for the new ones. The new ones are embedded there. And Lindsay, we do have the old ones still available somewhere, right?
Yeah, I have copies of them. We're going to put them out on the portal as a differentiated version.
Okay.
Those just aren't like publicly available right now.
Okay. So if the old unit summary tables that just had the 4 blank boxes, if that's something you want to challenge some kids in your class who, are ready to just kind of, go put them in a corner and, hey, you guys figure this out. They don't want to follow along with the class. If that's something you want right now, send one of us an email and we'll get it to you. And then Lindsay's publishing as fast as she can, but eventually they'll be available for everybody. But in the meantime, the new ones are in the lesson plans and they're on the homepage for each unit, and they're scaffolded. And so what we did was we pre-printed some of the stuff for kids so they don't have to write it all down. What did we do? Already, filled in. What evidence did we gather? So we gave them some scaffolds, some sentence starters, and you know, circle the right word kinds of things. And then what did we figure out? So what evidence did we gather is what did we find out in the Uncover lab? And then what did we figure out? That's, you know, what did we, when we had that share productive talk kind of consensus discussion, what did we figure out? And what is listed there in the what did we figure out is basically prompts to lead kids to do that gotta have checklist. So what are the key concepts that we should have gotten? And we just kind of scaffolded it so that they don't have to do a ton of writing. And it's not that we don't want kids to write, but I remember, again, I taught 6th grade, so hopefully 7th and 8th grade, maybe not quite as bad, but my kids couldn't copy stuff. Like if I was helping them fill out the unit summary table on the document camera, like they can't hold more than 1 or 2 words in their head at a time. And so they, one word, write it down, one word, write it down. And it would take a really long time. And it was probably not the best use of our classroom time. So less writing on the unit summary tables is going to save you some time. Unfortunately, if you're buying the student workbooks from Kendall Hunt, they will not be changing the unit summary tables during this publishing cycle for the units that are listed there: 61, 62, 64, 73, 75, 81, 84, and 87. The other ones, as they come out, the new workbooks will have the new unit summary tables, and eventually they'll go back and revise those. But the unit summary tables are always going to be available for you on the dashboard. So even if you're using the workbooks, if you want to use the new ones instead, just for that part of it, you know, you can always find them on the teacher dashboard and use them that way. And then slide guides. This is something that teachers asked for a very long time. And we had a kind of a mishmash depending on teachers. Some teachers had done them and then contributed them, and we had some from COVID. And but we have worked on the team to have a cohesive, consistent format for them. And every unit now has a slide guide for every single lesson. So they are all listed in a single folder that you can click on the link on the unit homepage, but they're also now embedded as a resource in each lesson plan. So whether you go to the lesson plan or whether you just go to the unit homepage, you can find those slide guides. And we do suggest that you just use those to get yourself started. They're not meant to be complete, but they're there. And then in terms of grading, which is going to help you maybe reclaim some personal time, we're going to ask you to think about proficiency levels. And your grading may go a lot faster, especially for the embedded assessments and the pre-post tests. So we have 4 basic proficiency levels. You may have seen these in phase 1 or some phase 2 work, or if you've gone to any of the assessment series that Barb has done. And then so Barb has a lot of expertise with standards-based grading. And so we've come up with 4 levels. And then how do you convert the levels to a grade book number? And this was a big aha for me. Level 3 is not 75%. Level 3, because that's where we want most kids to be, that's proficient. You can make your own grade conversion, but here are a couple of examples. And level 3 can be a 90% or a 94%, right? So so that can make it work. In the embedded assessments, these have always been there. They're in the teacher version. It tells you which questions kids should get right in order to be at the different levels. Last year in October or November, we completed guidance for all of the pre-post tests. So same idea. The question is the big scenario, and then the first question is part A, and then part B, part C. So if kids get the first 2 questions in question 1 right, they're level 2. If they get the next one right, they're level 3, and so on. And then use these conversion tables, and you can give kids a grade fairly quickly. You can even just start with that last question, that last part. And if they get the last part, you know, give them a 4.0 for level. If you would like to know more about that too, we have a whole 2-hour dig into it kind of virtual session coming up. So I'm going to give you one last time in your breakout rooms to chat with your colleagues about some of these things. So we talked about the unit summary tables, the slide guides, and then the grading recommendations. And I know we're flying through this, and it's probably not everything that you need for these, but just to kind of give you a taste, and then we'll give you some opportunities to learn a little more later in the year. And we'll tell you when we can do that. So I'm going to pop you in there just for about 5 minutes. Which resources look good to you, and do you have questions about those that we can answer today? All right, thanks everybody for coming back. And again, I know it was just a few minutes, and we kind of did a flyby here. But looking for ways to stay on top of grading. What does grading in the units look like? Slide guides are certainly going to be helpful. Unit summaries, unit summary tables are a great study resource. When parents say, what can I do to help my child? How can I help them prepare for the test? You know, refer them to the unit summary table. Grading rubrics, and then the unit introduction letter. Will parents find them helpful? I don't know, but that was a teacher and PLF request. We were asked if we could do that, and we're like, yeah, I think we can do that. So I don't know, but some people wanted it, so we threw them together. Grading rubrics, how can you use them with common assessments and do standards-based grading without being allowed to do it. I think you can use this process without calling it standards-based grading, the way Barb has broken it down. You're really just figuring out which questions they got right, and the questions are not all the same. If you popped in a little bit before we closed the rooms, there's the questions in those scenarios are scaffolded. So they starts with reminding kids about the DCIs that they've learned. And then it moves into looking at maybe the data table or the model that's in the question and asking them to use some of the SCPs that they're supposed to use. And then the final wrap it all up at the end question is going to ask them to think about the DCI, the SCP, and the cross-cutting concept, and do some writing. And they're structured that way on purpose to lead kids through a sense-making experience. But that means that all the questions aren't equally weighted, right? So if the kids get the first 2 right, but they can't get the rest of it right, that doesn't mean that they know half the stuff. It means they only know the DCI, and that's and they're still struggling with the SCP and the CCC. So using that proficiency scale where we think about basic means they can get some of the DCI and the SCP, but they can't use 2 or more at a time, or they have some big errors. Level 3 is where we want most kids to be. They can, they're aware of SCPs and DCIs, and they can use at least 2 of them at a time. They may have some minor errors or lack of sophistication still. And then level 4 is when you've got the kids who can knock it out of the park. They can tell you what the content is. They can use at least 1 SCP to come up with their explanation, and they can do it through the lens of the CCC, like patterns or structure and function or whatever. So I really would recommend that you come to one of our assessment series, and we'll go through either the phase 2 assessment, which is not going to be until spring, or the assessment series that's coming up in October. And we talk about, what does that structure look like? How can you use that structure to come up with proficiency based on how kids do on that structure? And then how you can do it really quickly with the guidance that Barb has come up with. So you can kind of see the pattern here. A and B are probably a level 2. And when you add question C, now you're adding in the SCP, so now you're at a level 3. And question D means you can use all 3 together. All right, so we're just about out of time. Our next learning series is dive into one of our new off-the-shelf lessons about graphing. And so if you're looking to improve your kids' ability to analyze graphs, different kinds of graphs, all different kinds of graphs, join us for that. And we're going to have, we have a teacher who worked on this and one of our CD members, and they'll talk about, Jenny will talk about how it worked in her classroom and the good things that came of it. And then coming up, we have a drop-in. If you are somebody who does not have a local PLF, maybe you're assigned to me because there's nobody in your district or your region who's a PLF and you have some questions. If you want to talk about standards-based grading, that would be an opportunity too. And then the unit bubble map is phase 2. So if you want to polish your pedagogical skills there. And then on Thursday, October 16th, Barb is going to present using standards-based grading with MyStar assessments. And we will, by the time you're done with that, you will know how to use those recommendations and make your life easier. So think about attending that if you can. And here's an invitation, as we always provide to our Facebook group. It is a private group. Only teachers with MyStar subscriptions are in it. So if you'd like to get some updates and communicate with people, there's that. And then on the last slide, there is a link to feedback. We do look at the feedback. So if you want to give us some feedback, we'd be happy to hear that. And we thank you so much.